JR, thanks for your video reflections. Sometimes the most important questions are the simplest ones, particularly when we're doing philosophy. So I'm grateful to you for just asking what is solidarity because you know, when we do look up its basic definition, there's still a lot of room to provide alternative interpretations of what it would mean to um, have an agreement of feeling with a group, or an agreement of action, an agreement of um, sympathy with others. You posted some great videos that defined solidarity both from a more secular point of view and also from a religious, a Catholic point of view. And I wanted to get into this a little bit. There are some definitions of solidarity that suggest that it's some kind of bond between individuals, which, that's a fine definition, but we have to break it down a bit more, right? So, are we, when we define solidarity in this way, presupposing that individuals pre-exist their social bonds? So that, in other words, solidarity is a choice that separate individuals make, a choice to come together, or a choice to love one another, right? Love thy neighbor, as the Bible says. This is a different kind of solidarity than I think Marx was talking about, and a different kind than what Timothy Morton is talking about. So for Marx, the individual, and I hope that Pomeroy's work helped clarify this, the individual is in a dialectical relationship with society, so that the individual is a social construct. At the same time that, of course, society is composed of creative individuals. So individuals are, yes, creating themselves, but in so doing also creating others, and others who are also creative individuals are creating themselves and creating us. So, this is what someone like Donna Haraway means when she uses the term sympoiesis. She's trying to get at this dialectical entanglement between individuals and their society, right? Between organisms and the ecology within which they are embedded. So it's not that solidarity is pre-existing individuals who begin separately, then decide to come together into some sort of agreement of feeling or action. It's not as though individuals just decide to love thy neighbor. Or at least, if we're going to talk about what it means to love thy neighbor, we have to talk about it in a deeper sense, where we don't really have a choice. To the extent that we are persons or souls, it's because others loved us, right? Our mother loved us, and so allowed us to flower into the sort of well-integrated individuals with self-esteem and boundaries and the ability to navigate social life. Unless we are raised in a loving context, we don't have the ability. Human beings don't have the ability to navigate social reality. So solidarity, in Marx's sense, is the way in which human beings make one another. We don't decide to have solidarity. We can decide to be conscious of our solidarity. And in a capitalist society, Marx would point out that we've become unconscious of our solidarity because we mistakenly believe that we are separate. Capitalism functions by reproducing that illusion of separateness, by preventing us from seeing that we do have common cause. We, the workers of the world, right? We do have common cause against those who would steal the value of our labor from us and then sell it back to us as consumer goods. So Marx would want to point out this dialectical bond that individual human beings begin their lives with, this dialectical bond with society, so that love at this deeper level, the way that we are intermeshed, that our metabolisms are interconnected, that's what he means by solidarity. And Marx begins to imagine a form of non-human solidarity because he ties humanity's metabolism, our economy, to the earth, to the soil, to the sunlight, to the birds and the bees and the flowers, the fruits and vegetables. He's recognizing the way that human beings are made of this same material, this same energy. And if we don't take care of the wider non-human energy systems we're embedded within, then we humans will perish. But see, this is still Marx's anthropocentrism, right? Yes, human beings are part of the metabolism of the earth. We're not separate from it. But still, for Marx, the communist economy would treat the earth as belonging to humans, as something that humans are to use to facilitate their own freedom and creativity. What Morton is doing is trying to really drop the bottom out of Marxism so that this hierarchy, this anthropocentric hierarchy, no longer holds. So for Morton, yeah, solidarity means not just a bond between humans, it means a bond between our whole evolutionary family, kinship with all the beings composing us, whether it's a genetic composition in the past or an ecological composition in the present, right? So, and what's fascinating is that within Catholic teaching now, with Pope Francis's encyclical, released, published a few years ago, in 2015, I believe, there's a recognition on Francis's part that solidarity does include non-humans, and that modern anthropocentrism has become excessive and misguided. So Pope Francis writes that, this is in Laudato Si, Care for Our Common Home, his encyclical, although it is true that we Christians have at times incorrectly interpreted the scriptures, nowadays we must forcefully reject the notion that our being created in God's image and given dominion over the earth justifies absolute dominion over other creatures. The biblical texts are to be read in their context, with an appropriate hermeneutic, an appropriate interpretation, recognizing that they tell us to, quote, till and keep the garden of the world. Tilling refers to cultivating, plowing, or working, while keeping means caring, protecting, overseeing, and preserving. This implies a relationship of mutual responsibility between human beings and nature. So Francis is pointing out, though, in the Bible, Genesis, the book of Genesis, says that human beings were given dominion over the earth by God. That this meant that we were supposed to dominate the other creatures of the earth, to put them to our own uses, regardless of their own sufferings and pains, and regardless of their own desires, to live a thriving existence. So Francis is saying dominion means take care of. It means to love the individual organisms, non-human organisms composing the earth community. So when Jesus says, love thy neighbor, it's important to remember that our neighbors might also be rather strange, right? So it's also love strangers. Our neighbors are strangers. Neighbors aren't people we're necessarily comfortable loving, right? Neighbors can also be foreigners. Neighbors can be other species that may not actually know how to reciprocate our love. But the kind of love that produces solidarity is not the sort that respects reciprocation, right? It's love regardless of any payback. It's love that's not an exchange, as though it were in a capitalist marketplace. It's a gift. So God's economy is a gift economy. Loving thy neighbor is loving without the expectation of return. Solidarity implies loving without the expectation of return. So I hope that brings to light more of the potential meaning of this term, solidarity. It's very deep, and I'm very glad that you asked this question, JR. Never be afraid to ask the simple questions. They're almost always the most interesting.